This is your journey. Since the beginning of time, everyone has a story, and no one knows the secret. Right now, you're on the threshold of an amazing adventure. A new pathway to a new world. Enter this magical world. Now. Discover a triumph of the will, an epic story of the spirit. Discover, transform your state of mind, and uncover the truth. Tonight, the journey continues. What you learn may save your life. You will never feel the same again. And so it begins. This is your journey. Are you ready?
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the journey. Before we embark on this journey, the members of the choir would like to introduce themselves to you. Here they are.
Believe it or not. But those beautiful super voices are just a bunch of people like you and me. And in a minute they will sing you a story about the journey of the human soul. And you all are invited to sing along. The story started some time ago, when 2 of my grandchildren came to visit me a few times. My granddaughter Cassandra and her brother Nathan. Twins, just 17 years young. We talked a lot about life, and they seemed to be very curious. They asked me to tell them more about the soul and its meaning to their life thus far, and to the path that lies ahead of them. So I told them, we are not human beings on a spiritual journey, but we are spiritual beings on a human journey. And this answer made them curious enough to dig deeper into this mystery. Determined to have them answered, they started to backpack to the mystic land of Antioch. There, Mathia, the wise high priestess of soul, lived in the beautiful outskirts of a small town called Lantis. And in her secret garden, she teaches students about the journey our soul makes while we travel through life on this beautiful planet, Earth.
Hello, Mathia. Thank you for giving us the opportunity to visit you.
Cassandra and Nathan, you are very, very welcome. I knew you were on your way to me.
We came to you looking for answers to questions that are very pressing to us. Our biggest question is, what will the future bring to us? And what does the soul mean for our personal journey?
Yeah, we've always wondered how we got here. I mean, when does my spiritual soul enter my body? It's such a strange idea.
Whoa, you're smart twins. Well, let's just start at the beginning. Life starts with a strange miracle we call incarnation, which literally means coming into the flesh. Immediately after conception, your body starts to take shape, and we assume we're just flesh then. But soon, we don't know how soon, our immortal soul enters the flesh. That's the day we arrive on the planet, and we become real human beings. The start of a journey that will go on until we find our place on the path unwinding.
But the sun rolling high through the sapphire sky keeps great and small on the endless round. It's a through faith and love, till we find our place on the path of winding in the circle of
Can you tell us something about how we experience birth when our soul comes into an unknown world?
As a baby, you're entering in what I call the family paradise. Through the divine center of our soul, our spiritual heart, you receive the pure and loving energy of your parents. Life seems like a fairy tale then. You are born getting good gifts from the good fairies, but also bad gifts from the bad fairy. That's part of the plan, you see. Later on, you will have to learn to deal with it, but for now, your parents do their very best to bring you up and protect you from the sorrows and dangers of everyday life. You're like a little princess that lives in the castle of the king and the queen. And it is this short stay in paradise that creates a very important sense of home, a longing that you will feel for the rest of your life. It is the call from a long-forgotten, beautiful and safe world of magic.
I sure wish my life would be like that again, but it isn't at all. Why and how did this world of magic vanish?
Your idyllic world can't last forever. Beautiful as it is, it has no evolution, no individuality, no consciousness, and hardly any connection to the problems of the outside world. And it lacked a drive that's equally important as the call of home. The call for adventure, for freedom, for growth. It's the call of the wilderness that we needed, but did not hear. That's why the paradise eventually breaks down. And it hurts.
Can't we just skip this step?
It's important that you understand that this is an unavoidable and necessary step for everyone. When you are still very small, the great disturbance is upon you. The human tragedy, the breach of the we. Despite all the efforts of the loving parents, the princess, vulnerable as she is, hurts herself spinning at the wheel of life. Violently, you are driven out of paradise. Suddenly you find yourself cut off from your family. This earthquake brings you agony. It represents the first and most painful splinter in your soul. From then on, you become more cautious, especially in situations that remind us of the betrayal by the ones we thought would unconditionally love us forever. A task that, tragically enough, no parents, having experienced and repressed the same breach themselves, are able to fulfill.
Are you sure all humans experience this unavoidable painful breach? Did we all become cautious ever since? Why?
Every one of us has experienced this, but there's also something good that comes out of this. The same moment the breach occurs, a miracle happens. We rise up as an individual out of the strange mist of the unconscious. And from then on, we are able to develop ourselves as an individual person outside the we. That's why the breach had to occur.
But how can a little kid overcome this nightmare, just being on its own?
There's just no way back. Life goes on. Driven by the will to survive, you go on with your life. And you are able to travel through your school time and adolescence, and you eventually become an adult. And you don't travel on your own. It looks like we, as an individual, mimic the journey mankind as a whole made to conquer the world. The tribe that all humans come from was driven out of its habitat. Paradise was lost, and the tribe had to move on. There was no way back. The great journey of mankind began, and through the courageous conquering of the many stumbling blocks our ancestors met on their quest, they were able to move on, time and again, leaving all they gained behind. And here we are.
Feel the thunder rolling. Paradise is lost. Wounded heart, crying soul,
feel we live in an ideal world. What's wrong with it?
We must learn to understand and accept that there's something wrong. All over the world there's poverty and hate. There are many wars and millions of people are on the run everywhere. We abuse the world, misuse the poor, and we don't see it. Heaven seems to be out of sight.
Are we blind or something?
We are inclined to put the blame for our problems on the outside world, on other people or on chance. It's simply easier to look away and be blind. We just put the inconvenient truth away in the dungeon of our unconsciousness. But these repressed demons, our unsolved problems, keep haunting us. They make us feel restless and sense inner fear. And finally, the crisis hits us.
The crisis?
A crisis is like a whirlpool of mixed feelings like fear, despair, anger, and hate. We become ill, get involved in conflicts, feel lovesick, suffer from defeat, blame others for our misery, lose faith, and wrestle with the temptations and addictions of modern society. A crisis is a necessary operation that improves our inner eyesight.
So, only after this operation we can learn to see and to accept that we must do something about it ourselves?
Surely. A crisis, this crisis, is our chance to see things better, to see that we have to go on, change and grow. And slowly, it dawns upon us. We must not just accept it, but act and build our own future, a new one, a different one, a heavenly one indeed. But this is so much easier said than done, and we are not ready yet for this step. It takes a lot of work and patience, and above all, time. It always takes longer than we expect. But we must keep the faith and hold on.
So we must hold on when things get tough. We get that. But that sounds like hard work. We need some help. Is there any spiritual workout for the soul, maybe?
There is. The way out of our worldly troubles is always a spiritual one. The solution lies within. Here our journey turns from the outside to the inside.
Do you mean we should learn more about repentance? Meditation maybe? Or even prayer?
Something like that, yes. First you will need to silence the mind in order to be able to hear the answer that comes from within. The simple motto is, stop, be still and listen.
Well, I understand that going mad at my brothers and sisters or blaming my parents for their mistakes will not help me. But how will this motto help me? And how does it work anyway?
Well, go to a place where you can be alone and no one can hear you. Then honestly pour out your heart. Scream your anger and fear into the open and accuse openly and loudly all those who abandoned you, who hurt you so badly and so cruelly on your often so lonesome journey to an unknown future. Accuse your father openly, your mother, your sister, your brother, and all the enemies you met. And finally maybe accuse God, who doesn't care you do so, because he already knows what's going on inside you anyway. So, then, when your rage comes down, then stop your physical and mental agitation. Just be still and try to listen to your inner voice. It maybe will take a lot of these sessions before you succeed, but eventually, after all this time, the heart of your soul is waking up again. And its forgotten power will soon be able to raise you up to more than you can be.
And hold my soul so weary. When trouble comes and my heart burned it be, and I am still and wait here in the silence until you come and sit a while with me. You raise me up so I can stand on mountains. You raise me up to walk on stormy seas. And I am strong when I am on your shoulder. You raise me up more than I can be. Then I am still and wait here in more than I can breathe. You raise me up to more than I can.
It feels so good that there is a way we can get in touch again with the power within. But how do we translate it into the right answers to the question of our everyday life?
We must keep searching for the new balance by combining this personal meditation with practicing our findings in everyday life. It's hard work to kick old habits and give up inner defenses.
Yeah, but sometimes I feel the road ahead is so full of stumbling blocks that we are bound to fail. Then the light is gone and there's so little power inside of me. I feel very empty and I just give up hope. It's like demons are haunting me.
It's all right, Nathan. It's inevitable that on the way we lose faith and fall back. But if we don't run away from our demons but face them, we can learn to keep the faith. If we patiently persist, we will finally succeed and find our destiny. But we still haven't found what we are looking for.
These city walls,
But how do we know we're on the right track?
You will recognize that you are on the right track through the unmistakable inner feeling to go on with what you are doing. Nothing can keep you from going on.
How will we know that we have reached this goal? What is it like?
Unfortunately, we will never know when this will happen. We can do our best to prepare ourselves for this happening. But when it comes, it's like lightning strikes us. And from then on, we know it. We are in touch with our inner center again. And we have the power to overcome all the troubles that come into our lives.
Feel like going on.
started our session with the circle of life, and now we are able to close the circle. The moment we restore the connection with our inner spiritual center, the connection with the inner spiritual centers of our fellow men, of humanity as a whole, is also restored. We become part of the spiritual we experience.
About closing the circle, just one more thing puzzles me. It has something to do with the first step of incarnation, and us being spiritual beings on a human journey. If our spiritual soul enters the flesh, where does it come from, and where will it go when we die?
Not everyone believes this, but I'm sure we come from a spiritual realm beyond space and time, and go back there when we die. We call this heaven. Some say we all have a guardian angel there, who guides us on our way to the life we choose to live. We apparently still have to learn some lessons then. This is reincarnation. And it would imply that we all are immortal spiritual beings that live forevermore.
En voor de alle 3 de concerten Michel en Robin, dank jullie wel. Alle vrijwilligers die dit project mede mogelijk gemaakt hebben, dank jullie wel. De Boogie Woogie in Ingersluit, dank jullie wel. Allemaal natuurlijk van harte bedankt. Maar als laatste moet ik natuurlijk nog even danken. De initiatiefnemer, de bedenker, de producer, degene die ons dit allemaal heeft aangedaan, dames en heren, de afgelopen weken, maanden, jaren zelfs. Yvonne is blij dat ik voorbij. Dames en heren, maar een groot applaus voor Rob de Visser! En voor Rob de Visser.